Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going? It's Broly Bro here with another little vanilla discussion guide in preparation for Nostalrius. And first things first, for those of you who watched this video on the day it was recorded, it is, of course, Thanksgiving. I just want to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope you guys have a good one. If you're wondering about what I'm doing here in the background, I wish that I could have had some, vanilla content to put in the background of these discussion videos, but, obviously Nostalrius is not quite here yet. Elysium was taken down, so didn't really have any vanilla content or old recorded videos from there to put up here in the background, so I'm just doing something I've been putting off for a long time, farming the old BC Netherrain mount before everybody wakes up and we get to cooking in the kitchen. So just gonna have this in the background. I figured it was better than just a couple of pictures or nothing, so obviously you guys can tab into your game or whatever. It's just a little discussion video, but yeah, in case everybody's wondering what I'm doing here in Legion, that is what's happening in the background. And also want to say to everybody, thanks to everybody who watched the my first Nostalrius video. Got a lot more views than I expected. It was my first video ever. I had 0 subscribers prior. A lot of people in the comments were saying nice things. Got a bunch of new subscribers. So yeah, thanks everybody for that. Anyway, today what we're talking about today is one of the most important things in vanilla, which is what class to play. There are a lot of videos out there on this, and I've been watching pretty much all of them. I'm still trying to decide what I want to play for NOS 2.0 myself. I haven't narrowed down to a few, but I figured for this video it'd be fun to kind of do like a little bit of a different take on that video which everybody's making on which class to choose. I figured I would ask for your guys' help. I'm going to give you the classes that I want to play and the reasons I want to play them instead of presenting the pros and cons of each for you guys. And then I figured if you guys could, I'm going to break it down, say here's what I'm looking for, here's what I want to do, narrow it down to a few classes, ask for your guys' help, and then I figure if you guys all, sort of come together and say, I think you should choose this one for this reason, then someone else says, no, I think you should pick this because of that or whatever, and then, I figured that would help all of us choose a little bit better, so you're a little bit more active, you're talking about it, you're thinking more about it than some of these videos. They're very useful and they give you a lot of information, but here you might be, more actively talking about it in the comments and, have a good discussion. It might help us out. I figured that'd be a little bit fun. So yeah, and first, something to go into consideration, at least for me, and it should be for you guys too if you played on old Nostalrius or old vanilla. One of the things I'm considering when I choose a class is what I already played on Nostalrius. So on Nostalrius, I had a 60 mage and a 60 shadow priest. I did not do much endgame on those. I pretty much got them to 60, and then I basically just PvP'd. I got to like rank 7 to 10 on both of them, somewhere around there. I didn't really do much pre-raid. I didn't do any of the raids really, so this doesn't factor too much into it for me because like I want to maybe play something new, so it'll be a little bit more fun because I'm a little bit burnt out on leveling. However, when it comes to the end game, playing those classes on the Nostalrius isn't really a factor. I also had a 50 shaman, so that's a small factor for me. Is choosing something different. I assume that's a factor for most of you guys too. You want to go with, you want to pick, something you're either comfortable with that you've been doing, or maybe you want to pick something new because that's a little bit more fun. That's how it is for me. And so first, what I'm going to do is say what I look for in a class. Since we're basing this video around what I want, and then we're gonna have the big discussion at the end, hopefully in the comments and everything, which will help everybody out. I personally am a big fan of caster DPS. So if you don't like caster DPS, or that's not one of the choices for you guys, maybe not the best video for you to help out, but there is plenty of others if that is the case. I might even give a link. This one guy's YouTube channel, I was watching some of his videos. They were really good. I think, I'm not going to say his username because I actually don't remember, but he did like a mini series for each class, and he went really in depth on all of them, way more than I will, and just gave the information on all of them. Really good background information. I watched about 2 or 3 of them. A little mini series for each class. I might put the link to there. If you guys are looking for a bit more information after this, or if you want to watch something instead of this. But anyway, I like casters mainly, although rogue is a possibility for me, by the way. So it's not only casters, but I do prefer casters usually. I always have. I am mainly looking for PvP. I plan on raiding. I will not play a class that has 0 raid potential, because that's what most of vanilla is. There's no arenas, there's no raided battlegrounds, so it's mainly PvE. So I need a class that can function in PvE, but I do prefer to have a class that is good in PvP, specifically 1v1 in world PvP. That's really important for me. You know, I want leveling up to be able to win these 1v1s. If I get ganked by maybe a group of 2 or 3, I want to have a chance to maybe not win the fight, but at least take 1 or 2 of them out. So that's a big factor for the classes I'm going to choose. And then before I talk about the classes, which are, you know, basically in the running for what I'm going to pick, I'm going to just real quick eliminate the classes, which I'm really not considering at all. If you guys are huge advocates of those classes and you want to, you know, try and sway me, sure thing, go for it. But don't see it happening. One is Warrior. I just don't really have any interest. They just don't have the sustain in world PvP for me. You know, in BGs they're really powerful, especially once you get max gear. You know, Warriors turn into, you know, wrecking balls. They're insane. But you sort of need a pocket healer. They're not that great in world PvP. They're not that amazing in 1v1s, or at least a lot of 1v1s. It's just not for me. Hunter, I don't really have any interest in either. Just not a class for me. Paladin, absolutely zero interest. And then Druid. Druid is somewhat interesting to me. You know, I played Feral a little bit back in the original vanilla, but from what everybody says and from what I saw when I was playing on Nostalrius, if you BG as a Druid, you're either healing or you're flag carrying. You don't really see many people, you know, running around in kitty form DPSing, and that's what I would like to do. That also pretty much never happens in raids, so Feral or Druid in general is pretty much off the table for me as well. So next we have classes that are, you know, a maybe, right? And then I'll have, you know, classes that are at the top of the food chain. But next we have the classes that are sort of in the middle, maybe. One is Shaman. Now Shaman, as you can see right now, you know, I'm on my Shaman right now. This is my main. Been my main for a long time. Multi-rank 1 Shaman. I love Shaman. Never played it in vanilla. In fact, I didn't start playing Shaman until Cataclysm. So it'd be really fun to play Shaman before, or like how it was back then. See how it was? It's a lot different, of course. Like I said, I had a 50 in Nostalrius. It was fun leveling and stuff. Definitely different. Never got to do the end game, so I kind of want to. They are good in PvP. And I would be playing Ellie, by the way, if I didn't say that. Sorry if I did. I would not be playing Enhance or Resto. If I didn't clarify that. I think I did. But anyway, we'll be playing Ellie. They're very good in PvP, especially BGs. You sort of stay in the back. You nuke targets with chain lightning and stuff. They look fun. They definitely have some pretty strong 1v1 potential from what I've seen. 1v2s and whatnot, I'm not 100% sure on how like 1v2s and stuff go with them. Maybe you guys can give me some information if you guys know more. Of course, I've seen, you know, PvP videos, but those are all montages and stuff. It's not necessarily the most realistic. But the reason Shaman is only a maybe and not higher, since, you know, it is obviously what I main and it's one of the most appealing classes to me. The reason it's only a maybe is, one, because if it's playstyle in BGs, it looks like you sort of just die and are not very effective unless you just sort of stay in the back and, you know, turret, chain lightning, and lightning bolts, which, you know, can be fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Every class does, you know, what it does, but maybe not the best playstyle. And number 2 is, from what I've heard, you pretty much cannot PV at all as an Ellie Shaman, hardly even as a enhanced Shaman. They're just one of those unicorn specs, you know, like Feral, Druid, Boomkin, and a few others that you just really don't see in raids before, you know, AQ or Nax or even BC, whatever it may be. So, like I said, I really want to PvP the most. I would love to just farm BGs and stuff, but, you know, PvP is a huge part of vanilla, way bigger than PvP, in fact. And if a class just straight up can't raid, probably don't want to do it. I'm sure I could get away with raiding, you know. I'm sure some people would take me. They know I'm a good player or whatever. Maybe a slightly less super serious guild would take me, but even if I made it, you know, you're sort of not pulling your weight necessarily. You're sort of just being taken, and also you're stealing gear from other classes. So Shaman is, you know, maybe at best, even though I really do love Shaman. Next up would be Warlock. The reason Warlock is on here, I've actually almost never played a Warlock, pretty much ever. It's one of my least played classes for all 12 years of WoW's existence. The reason Warlock's on here is because, you know, it might be fun to do something new, and Warlock is really fucking strong in both PvP and PvE, and that's, you know, what I'm looking for, right? And they also have sick, you know, 1v1 and 1v2 or 1v3 potential, right? They're really good in world PvP. You know, you try and gank them, they sack their Void Lord, they get a full fear, and they fucking nuke you, right? So the reason that's basically the main reason they're on here, right? It's just because of the possibility of playing something new being really fun, and obviously they're really strong. They're a really strong class. So Warlock, I don't really have too much more to say. They're just sort of a maybe for me, right? They're strong. Something new might be fun. I don't know how much I have to micromanage a pet. I've never been too good at that. I've never really played a pet class much. I don't know if that's super insane in vanilla. Maybe you guys can fill me in. I know in some of the PvP videos, you know, people are using their succubus and stuff. Of course, having just a succubus, keybind for seduce and stuff isn't that hard. But I don't know if you need to constantly be changing pets or fell dom summoning pets or anything. I don't know if that's super important in vanilla. Maybe you guys can fill me in. But that's something I'm, you know, not a huge fan of. But you know, hey, it's a maybe. The next one would be Rogue. Rogue is basically here for the same reason as Warlock. It's just really strong, right? Really strong in PvP, really strong in PvE. And it's something I haven't played much either. Rogue is probably next in line for my least played class. All 12 years of WoW, especially in vanilla. Didn't play almost any of it. One of the downsides of Rogue is, of course, they're one of the worst leveling classes, up there with Warrior. That's not really anything I'm worried about, though. Actually, I'm not worried about that at all. But in case anybody, you know, wants a little bit more information about the classes, Warlock, like I just talked about, very good for leveling. Most of the classes in my list are very good for leveling. The ones that I'm considering. The only really terrible class of leveling in vanilla is actually Warrior. Rogue is next up. And of course, pet classes are the strongest. But that's one downside of Rogue, but I'm not really worried about that. Rogue is just here because I haven't played it much. They're really strong. Like I said, I prefer casters. My biggest concern with the Rogue is on the Nostalrius, my lag was, or my MS was pretty bad. There was some significant delay. And I feel like playing a melee with high MS is just straight up worse, of course, than playing a caster. And it's just sort of the way it is. I don't know if anybody has any information, if there's been any given on how the new servers will be in terms of like lag and MS for players in the US or just players in general. If it'll be any different, that's one big concern for me. But yeah, Warlock and Rogues, they're just sort of here as classes that I haven't played much of and that are really strong. And then next we have the classes that are at the very top of my tier list. The classes I played the most in vanilla. Well, at least in Nostalrius. I guess I didn't play much of them. Like in the original vanilla, I played a hunter. But, you know, I was like 10 or 11, so that experience is, you know, much different. I'm not going to equate that too much. So the class I have the most experience with in vanilla, at least recently, Nostalrius, Mage and Shadow Priest. Both are very, very strong in their own right. Shadow Priest, the biggest problem with them, as most of you know, anyone who's been considering playing a Shadow Priest, is it's hard to raid as a Shadow Priest. In vanilla, you only have that 8 debuff slot, I think it is. 8 or 16, I don't remember. It gets changed, but I think it's 8. And Shadow Priests take up like 3 debuff slots, so that's the biggest problem with Shadow Priests in PvE. So it's kind of hard to raid as a Shadow Priest. At the very most, a raid will have 1. I think usually a raid will have 0. Especially a super try-hard raid or a guild. And of course, I'm going to try and join the best guild possible. I want to take it serious. I want to like be in a guild that's min-maxing, that's pushing progression as hard as they can. That's, you know, going for realm first or whatever, downing everything as fast as they can. So it'll be hard as a Shadow Priest, I think. But, you know, the pros of a Shadow Priest are, one, I love playing Shadow Priest. It's really, really fun. They have insane 1v1 potential. They're one of the strongest 1v1 classes, if not the strongest 1v1 class. They're just really hard to bring down 1v1 with Shadow Form and Shield. You know, and also something I haven't mentioned yet is I'm going to be rolling Horde. And Horde is really powerful for the classes I want to play. Because, well, at least 3 of the 5 that I'm talking about, mainly Priest, Warlock, and Mage is way better Horde. Because if you're Alliance, you have to go against Shamans. Shamans have Purge for Ice Barrier. They have Shear for your casts. You don't have to deal with that if you're Horde. And also you have to go against a million fucking undeads who have Will the Forsaken, right? And also Shamans have Tremor too. So for your classes and class that rely on casting like Mage and your main defensive being Ice Barrier, and as a Shadow Priest, Power Word Shield, you're just way stronger as Horde. And then also as a Shadow Priest, you know, you have way better racials as Horde. At least for PvP, you have Devouring Plague as undead and stuff. So, but yeah, Shadow Priests overall just really strong. Mainly 1v1. They're like pretty decent in pre-made BGs and stuff, which is, you know, going to be what I focus on mainly in PvP, because, you know, in vanilla that's all there really is. There's, you know, pre-made groups, farming as much honor as you can each week, and, you know, climbing the rank system, the old hardcore, you know, rank 14 system. Something I really want to do. It's gonna be hard to you know, juggle with raiding, which is, you know, what I'm gonna do. But BGs, they're pretty strong, but what I remember on Nost is I oomed really fast. I'm not sure if it always stays that way. I do know that Shadow Priests do have mana problems, but I'm not sure if it's always as bad as it was for me on Nos, because I didn't really have much gear. Like I said, I didn't really do much PvE. I didn't have any pre-raid gear, so maybe someone in the comments will know how the mana problems change later on if you have PvE gear and stuff. I know they're always there, but maybe not as bad. Like for me, I was like, you know, throwing out 2 or 3 dots and maybe 2 or 3 in Mind Blast, and I was pretty much too. You know, I'm throwing 1 or 2 more Mind Flays, and I'm and I'm wanding, and I'm just, you know, just hoping someone gave me Mage Water before the game started, because that's like half of the BG for me. So they're more or less a 1v1 class in my eyes, at least for the way my experience went, which is cool. You know, 1v1 is up there in my priority. So next is Mage, and Mage seems to be the overall choice for me from, you know, what I've been discussing. They do everything. They're really strong in PvP, really strong in PvE. They're pretty much the king of world PvP, right? I mean, you have so much control. I would say Warlock would be next best, right? You have so much control with Sheep. You can, you know, Sheep Nova. You can Cold Snap another Nova if you need. You know, Mage is pretty much the only class capable of doing, you know, 1v3s to 4s to 5s, you know, depending on the classes, right? If you're fighting a bunch of melee, it's vaguely possible to 1v4 in vanilla as a Mage, you know? And they're really strong in PvE, so Mage is probably the go-to. So for me, the biggest question is there something about those other classes, other than Mage, that are worth taking over Mage? And for me, if I had to pick which one I want the most, I think I would actually prefer Shaman or Priest to Mage. But the thing is, I don't know if it's enough to take over the upside that Mage has over both of those classes. So maybe you guys can help me out, and of course in the comments, hopefully we can all talk and, you know, help each other figure it out. Hopefully, you know, me giving my point of view and my perspective on, you know, what I'm looking for will help you guys, you know, think about what classes you want or why, and then, you know, maybe you can come counter some of my points or give me some different advice, and then, you know, someone will respond to that, and hopefully we can have a really good discussion, which helps us all come to a conclusion for ourselves. The one last point for me in picking a class would be, is it more fun to do something which I know I'm going to enjoy at 60, right? Because it's a strong class, and that's, you know, a big part of enjoying it for me is I want to play a class that's good, you know? It's not fun if you're playing Ellie and I can't, you know, fucking raid. If no one's going to take me. On Nost, I played a Night Elf Priest because I didn't realize that racials were a big thing, or that racials were different for priests in vanilla. I didn't know that. And like, I could hardly even get into pre-made BGs. It was already hard enough getting into 6-5 mans because I was Shadow. It was already hard enough getting into these pre-made BGs, but then I couldn't, you know, get into some because I was a Night Elf too. So the supercharged groups were like, no, fuck this guy. So, you know, you want to play something that's strong. But so for me, like I said, one of the biggest questions is, do I want to play something that I know will be good, like a Mage, which I've played before, I know I'll enjoy, or would it be more fun to do something new? Which is why the Warlock and Rogue are on my list, and they're such a strong consideration for me. Is because I understand how much more fun it can be to experience something new. They're both strong, so I won't, you know, have to worry about them not being good or being unplayable. So what do you guys think? Do you think it's better to, and I know a lot of people are having the same question too. Do you think it's better to pick, you know, something that's in your comfort zone that you know is good, and you know it's not really going to go bad? However, it could be more fun to do something new. What do you guys think is the correct decision or train of thought in that question? But anyway, yeah, I think that about sums it up. I don't have much else to say. I didn't really have like a super strict script for this video. I'm just, like I said, I'm just sort of hanging out, you know, doing this in the background until people wake up for Thanksgiving to cook. So, and I've been wanting to, you know, get a second video out there. Put a few bullet points up. Hopefully it was concise and, you know, organized enough. And hopefully we can have a good conversation in the comments. But yeah, anyway, thanks guys for watching. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate if you subscribe. You know, maybe share this video or thumbs up. I'm going to try and put out more videos. Big Nostalrius vanilla focus, of course. I do play Legion. I do plan on, you know, having a Legion LE PvP guide out there soon for anyone who's interested in that. But as soon as Nostalrius comes out, that's going to be my huge focus. I already have a few other videos in mind too for before Nostalrius comes out. But anyway, yeah, guys, really appreciate it. Hope everyone has a good day, especially, you know, if you're watching this today. Hope you have a good Thanksgiving. Anyway, have a good one, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks.